I'm going to go through a presentation. When we looked at doing this presentation, there was a bit of backwards and forwards, which I'm sure several people are aware of. A few kind of things ended up on the internet, and I found this on the internet yesterday, which I thought was kind of funny. So I'll stick that up to start with. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about who we are, what is this free energy, how it, in our opinion, is a violation of COE conservation of energy based on time invariant transactions, discuss what time invariance is, and then look at specifically magnetic transactions. We ask a question that a lot of people will be asking here, which is what drugs are we on to make this cloud, and finally discuss the biggest issue that we've had, which is not the technology itself, but it's really attacking the mindset. So how do you actually get people to look at something like this in a rational way? Steorn was founded by myself and Mike Downey, who's hiding down the back there, just in case anybody wants anybody else to pick up, in 2000, with the objective of developing intellectual property. We specialise very much in the anti-fraud area, developing anti-counterfeit technologies. We work very heavily with people like Europol and so on, providing forensics for ATM fraud, specifically for all West African terrorist organisations. And in 2003, as part of a project we were doing to secure ATMs, we noticed some anomalous behaviour in magnetic transactions. I think the point that I tried to make to you here is this free energy thing isn't something we set out to achieve, it's something that we came across accidentally. And I have to say, since we've done that, our life has never been the same. The company itself is employed by lots of qualified engineers. We have 4 PhDs in magnetics and so on. So we're not coming at this as a bunch of guys who don't understand the impossibility of it. What's free energy? Well, the term free energy is a very broad term. You have thermodynamic free energy, Gibbs free energy and all of that. But to most people, free energy is not paying your USB bill. It can be free energy, which is harnessed from wind, solar and power. When I discuss free energy here, what I'm talking about is the process of creating energy. Something that is deemed to be an absolute impossibility. It's not something that's thought to be heinously difficult, but it's something that is fundamentally non-allowable. The reason it's deemed to be impossible is simply because we have this concept of the principle of the conservation of energy. The amount of energy in the universe remains the same at all points in time, forever. The principle of the conservation of energy is as fundamental as it gets in the world of science. You could say that really any sets of laws within the world of science have it as a basic premise. It can change form. So when you're driving your car along, all you're doing is taking the energy in the petroleum, converting it into motive energy. If you're cycling, you're taking the energy you have for breakfast and converting it into motive energy. It's an interesting thing that if you study it, because when I went to school, went to engineering school, we were taught thermodynamics, but not an awful lot of the thinking behind it. And it's a fascinating thing that since we made this discovery, that we've really looked into some of the kinds of the more logical aspects of conservation of energy. At the beginning of the 20th century, when Einstein came up with E equals mc squared, it caused, for a very short period of time, a debate about conservation of energy, because you could almost say that he's really saying that, you know, splitting mass, you're creating energy. It was quickly resolved with the concept of mass energy equivalence, that really mass is a form of energy, however we describe it in the world. During this debate, a German mathematician called Emmy Noether, from a long line of German mathematicians, developed something called Noether's theorem. And Noether's theorem is the fundamental mathematical and logical context for conservation of energy. Unfortunately, she was probably the wrong woman at the wrong time. She was a Jewish lady living in Germany when she developed this, and it's something that you probably have to dig into to even find. But to give you some context about the respects that she tells it, this is a statement that Einstein made. Slightly different political correctness context, because it's kind of saying not bad for a woman. Obviously, you can't get away with that these days. It's actually defining the incredible logical beauty of conservation of energy. Noether's theorem basically states that for conservation of energy to be valid, that there has to be a fundamental symmetry to it. and it introduces this concept of time invariance. And there's two key elements to time invariance though that I'll discuss. There's the time invariance on a simple transaction. When you lift the ball, the amount of work that you do is a function of obviously the weight of the ball, how high you lift it, and gravity. When you lower the ball, exactly the same thing. The work done is again a function of the distance you drop the ball, gravity, and the weight, and so on. And conservation of energy holds absolutely 100% solid for that. We ignore the amount of wind resistance and so on, and you add all of that, it would still sum to zero. So there's a beautiful symmetry to that. However, the reason that conservation of energy is so strong here is simply because Noether states that gravity or any fundamental force can't change with respect to time. So in other words, if gravity did vary, the other side of Noether's theorem that's very, very important is that the time frame of the transaction, speed of the transaction, does not vary the work done. So that if you lift this ball the same height, taking 1 second or 1 day, the work done is identical. It doesn't make any difference. And again, this is about the fundamental time invariance of the transaction. So, that's what I was going to get out of the way. If you look at the underpinning logic of conservation of energy, it comes down to two very simple, very straightforward statements. One, that the physical laws of the universe do not change with respect to time, ever. They are always the same. And the second one is that the total energy of transaction isn't a function of time. And if you think about the first law of thermodynamics, energy is neither created nor destroyed. There is no time variable at all. It's a statement that is irrespective of time. So what? Well, the interesting thing about this anomaly that we discovered 3 years ago is we noticed that certain magnetic transactions were actually time variant in a very microcosmic way. And when I say that they're time variant, I mean that the total energy of the exchange, when you're passing two magnets or whatever magnetic transaction you want to conduct, using ferromagnetics, actually varies based on the amount of time that the transaction is taken up. So if I go back to my ball lifting example, if you take that, the magnetic transaction, and you did that action in 1 millisecond or 1 minute, your actual total energy exchange would actually be different. The effect is not something that we discovered. This effect was discovered 140 years ago as being what we would term mislabeled as magnetic viscosity. It's basically a time variable in the flux and force fields of a magnetic interaction. The reason I'm saying it's mislabeled is because viscosity, the term viscosity implies a certain momentum to the transaction. That if you think of a fluid and you hit a fluid, even after you've hit it, it's still got momentum, whereas an actual magnetic viscosity or an SV reaction is actually momentumless. As soon as you withdraw the acting force or the acting effort, it dissipates. It's an incredibly interesting discovery because we didn't realize that we discovered something that had already been discovered. And then when we went off to research it and to look at whatever third-party white papers were out there, we found virtually nothing other than observational measurements. There's probably only 10 or 12 white papers in 140 years that actually try to grasp an understanding of this. And it's really seen as an engineering problem. It's a problem with tape drives.